Coming up next, we have architect Sohan Das, all the way from Minneapolis, USA. Sohan Das is the Vice President of Renewable Energy at EVS Inc. Prior to becoming Vice President, Sohan was the Director of Solar and Energy Storage at EVS until December 2019. Sohan joined EVS in 2014 and helped start the solar group in the company. He is a seasoned solar energy veteran, having worked in the industry for around 11 years. At EVS, he spearheads the design teams and has completed designs for more than 3 gigawatt of solar throughout the US. Sohan has helped grow the electrical structural engineering and the solar development group from just himself to around 26 people in total within 6 years of his inception. He is also responsible for steering the company into new markets such as energy storage, substation engineering, and EV vehicle charging. Prior to joining EVS, Sohan had worked for solar developers and engineers, procurement and construction contractors such as Safari Energy, Lanco Infratech, and Vanzak Construction in the capacity of solar design/development engineer. He was responsible for the photovoltaic energy design for solar projects of various sizes from commercial rooftop solar to utility scale projects. Sohan has a master's degree in sustainable architecture from the State University of New York at Buffalo and a bachelor's degree in architecture from Shivaji University, India. He also did a couple of internships at a few architectural firms such as the Design Forum in Guwahati, India, and Sandberg and Kessler Architects in Buffalo, New York, prior to joining the solar industry. During his career, Sohan has applied his knowledge of sustainable architecture and building construction to help grow his solar engineering teams and has collaborated with other architects and engineers to design large rooftop solar installations across the United States. Today, Sohan will be presenting to us about his topic, Chasing the Sun. In this particular webinar, Sohan Das will talk about how architecture and solar energy are inherently connected and has been since centuries. In modern times, solar energy has played a critical role in making buildings sustainable, either through active or passive solar energy. Sohan will talk about different solar technologies associated with sustainable buildings and what design principles to keep in mind to make a building roof ready for solar. He will also elaborate on solar energy plus battery storage plus electric vehicle infrastructure and how that would be an integral part of majority of the buildings in the future. In conclusion, he'll also touch on how solar and sustainable energy will lead the economic recovery post the pandemic era. Over to you, Sohan.
So hello everyone. My name is Sohan Das. I'm the Vice President of Renewable Energy at EVS. We are a consulting engineering firm. We do a lot of solar projects all across the US. And today my topic is called Chasing the Sun. It's about solar energy, sustainable architecture, and a look into the future of how solar energy and sustainable architecture will drive the generations forward. So the topics we'll cover today, the first will be relationship between solar energy and architecture. There is a whole lot of history. I won't get into a whole lot of details there, but we'll still talk just a little bit about how solar energy architecture are very intricately related to each other. Then we'll talk a little bit about modern day use of solar in buildings and also in larger utility scale space where it's on ground. Then we'll also talk about the future. What does the future hold for solar energy storage, which is batteries, and there are a lot of different types of batteries out there. And then also how EV charging is going to play a big part of architecture, solar energy, batteries, and sustainability overall. And then we'll talk a little bit about solar energy and the post-pandemic recovery. And we believe that renewable energy and solar energy will play a big part in making sure that the economy is up and running after the whole pandemic subsides. One more thing that we'll touch base on would be how carbon credits play a role in advancing solar energy and other renewable energy and sustainable energy in the world moving forward. So just talking a little bit about the history of solar energy. the relationship of solar energy and architecture goes back to ancient human civilizations. What's on the screen, you might have seen it in your classes so very often. Like, this is nothing that I am teaching you new. Um, but in the past, the same concept has been used years and years, even in Chinese, old Chinese architecture, Greek architecture, Socrates, Aristotle, all of them followed these principles, where you have, uh, especially in colder countries, a lot of southern exposure. You bring the southern sun in, um, and then keep the summer sun out of the house. So if you can see on the screen, it's a very simple concept of having the roof overhang, so that you keep the summer sun out, but then you are welcoming the winter sun in, because the winter sun is very low in the winter, and that really helps heat up the space. This is pretty much how passive solar heating used to work. Again, as I mentioned, that ancient Chinese, Greek, Romans, Native Americans in America, um, and New Englanders in America as well understood this and were very big proponents of passive solar. I will talk a little bit about active solar energy and passive solar energy as well. Um, there are numerous types of active solar applications, and we'll talk just a little bit about solar photovoltaics, which is the most common use of active solar energy. We'll talk a little bit about solar heating and cooling. We'll talk a little bit about concentrating solar photovoltaics, which used to be very popular in the past, but then now, because of really cost competitiveness, solar photovoltaics has become the most popularly used application. Then obviously, just like we talked before, passive solar is, the way architect makes good use of solar energy is pretty much passive solar. And then there are a lot of building skins as well, in a lot of sustainable buildings across the world that uses solar energy, and that building skin can generate energy itself. So if you look in this screen here, the concentrated solar power, if you can see, there is a big solar array that reflects light into this tower, and then this tower, basically captures the heat, and that's one concept of concentrated solar power. The other one here on the screen on the right side is called the parabolic trough, which basically is, again, a curved solar panel which reflects light into this little tube, and then again, the heat gets stored and the energy gets stored in that way. The next slide shows a very typical solar photovoltaic installation, and this is one of the simplest and the most popular uses of solar energy. In this particular array, you see the sunlight hits the solar panels out here, and then basically it excites the electrons. They move around and they hit each other, and they generate electricity. It's very simple, but it's very amazing concept here. And then this electricity is converted from DC electricity to AC electricity, and then it's stepped up using transformers, or stepped down, and then sent out across to different households and businesses to use. So very, very simple concept. And then the next one is the passive solar again, but it is the building skin solar, which basically, if you can see, this most likely is a parking garage, and instead of having this open, they have put solar panels all around the building skin, and this won't generate as much electricity as the one on the left, which is perfectly tilted to capture the sun's angle perfectly, but it'll still capture a decent amount of electricity to use for this particular building. This is another example of a large rooftop solar installation. Now, I'm going to focus a little bit more on this because this is where architecture students need to be more knowledgeable about how they can apply solar on their buildings when you design it. And when we design, when I was in architecture school, we would not think much about the roof itself, the design of the roof. But then more and more we are seeing, like, counties and states are asking architects and builders to be cognizant of the roof design so that you can put solar energy out there in the future. So if you look at this particular roof, you will see this. Um, there are other roofs that are better designed than this as well, but this is still a okay example to see. If you see all these HVACs or all these outlets are in a straight line, which is good because then you get a lot of space. You can create a walkway around this roof, and then you can have access to different um, the different HVACs or different RTU units on the roof, but you can still put a lot of solar on this roof. So kind of thinking ahead of time and putting the HVACs and putting the RTUs in very strategic location, you can make good use of this roof. This particular one is installation in Poland in Europe. Now, moving on, this is one of the big solar installations in the USA. This is, as you can see, this is Las Vegas, and this one is a casino called Mandalay Bay, and it's a very large solar installation. It got a lot of press, and it was very famous out there in the industry. So what you can see is there are a couple of things that architects should consider when they design a roof. One would be roof orientation. So normally in northern hemispheres, southern-facing solar panels produce the most electricity. Um, the other piece is the solar panels produce the most electricity when it is aligned with the latitude. So if you are in 30-degree latitude, if you are closer to that 30 degrees tilt, you will get the most energy out of your solar panel. But on rooftop solar, sometimes the space is more valuable than trying to space out the solar panels with 30-degree tilt, because there is also shading from one solar panel to the other. So you have to make sure you are staying away from the shade. So you can tilt your modules back like 10 degrees and 15 degrees. So first is roof orientation is very important. So kind of orient your solar panels so that it is either facing south or southwest or southeast in some cases, especially in northern hemispheres. Then the roof slope. Now, roof slope is more important in case of pitched roofs. So in residences or or businesses which has pitched roofs, you have to make sure they are facing. They have an angle that is closer to the latitude. So as I said, here we live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Ideal tilt of a solar panel is closer to 40 degrees. But sometimes due to structural reasons, because there's a lot of wind uplift when you have it tilted back, we go with 30 degrees. In India, 10 to 15 to 20 degrees would be ideal, the roof, the solar panel tilt. Then the third most important point, and this is extremely important, is to avoid shading. So if there are any, like let's say if you have this building on the screen, you probably won't want to put solar panels here if this building is on the south. Now I don't know exactly which one is north or south in this picture, but you won't want to put anything to the north of this building because there will be a huge shadow from this building. But in this case, this particular building doesn't have any structure. Let's say I'm assuming this is south of the building, so we are good. There are also shading from other smaller structures, right? Like the HVAC units. So you have to make sure you are staying away from that. One thing that is becoming extremely important these days, and we advise architects all the time, is to make sure there is sufficient structural capacity. In US, we say solar panels can take up anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds per square feet. So you have to make sure the roof has enough structural capacity, and that has to be planned ahead of time when you put solar on the roof. Or sometimes you have to do roof retrofits to put solar on it, which is fine, but it ends up adding more cost than what it would have been if you had planned ahead of time. And then the last part is make sure the electrical room is solar ready. So you have electrical panels in the electrical room. So make sure there is enough spares or there is enough space for another additional switchgear if the solar array is going to be a large solar array. Now, in this particular array, I'll just point out a few things that they have done well. If you can see, there is, seems like they have provided a walkway to these RTU units, which is important because these RTU units or HVAC units needs maintenance, regular maintenance. So they've done a good job of keeping space here. And then they have done a good job of keeping these solar arrays kind of square. So it really helps with the cost effectiveness, because you don't want your solar arrays to be spread out too much. Uh, and then you start losing efficiency, you start losing, the longer the wires are, the more energy you lose. So the more compact you can keep the design is better. So yeah, so now we'll talk a little bit about the future of not only solar, but solar plus energy storage. As you know, that solar or wind cannot produce electricity all the time. Solar only produces electricity during the daytime. Wind only produces electricity in the when the wind blows. So what do you need to replace something like coal or replace something like oil and gas? You need continuous operation. So you need a battery. And batteries are expensive. And the good news is that the pricing is coming down, just like solar. Um, and there's a slide that I'll show later on, that how much solar panel pricing came down in the last 10 years. Uh, Batteries are going in the same direction. So hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see, batteries applied everywhere. I'm already seeing a lot in our projects where we're already using large lithium-ion batteries, and there are a lot of other battery technologies out there as well. We won't get into that in today's discussion, but if you're interested, you should definitely look up all the battery technologies that are out there. So this is the future of the home, where we can see there are solar panels on the roof of this home. There's a battery here that captures any excess solar energy produced that is not used up by the homeowners. There's a bidirectional charger here, which basically means, and this is a plug-in electric hybrid vehicle, and this was, on Mitsubishi's website. But basically, you can, generate electricity here, use in the home. Then any excess electricity, you can send it back. You can store it in the battery, or you can send it to the car, which can also store it in the car battery. And in the future, we also think that maybe you can take electricity back from when you need. You can take electricity back from this home battery in the nights or evenings if you need that, and also from the car to use in the home if needed. Um, so that's what we think that the future holds. And then this is just a quick example of, and we are already seeing a lot of parking lots and parking canopies, especially here where in places like Arizona and all, where the weather is really, really hot, you can put a solar canopy like this that will provide you shade, but will also generate electricity. Then you can have an electric vehicle charging station right next to it that will help you generate electricity from it. So yeah, that's one of the next big applications that we see in the commercial space. So what does the future look like? As I just said that, there's the back and forth of electricity. So right now, the way the electric grid is designed is energy only goes one way. It goes from, the electric grid to the home. And then if you're using electric vehicle, you're, from the home to the car. But what we see in the future, and we hope that will happen, is also bidirectional flow of electricity, where you can, which is already happening in some cases, and this is called net metering. We won't get to that, where you can generate electricity from your house, send it back to the grid, and if your electric utility allows, you can do that. But in the future, we are hoping that you can have a big battery, or you can use your car battery as well to send electricity back to either to the grid or to the home. So then you get a lot more flexibility out of that. And these are called V2G, which is vehicle to grid, V2H, vehicle to home. Again, this is a very, very new concept, and it'll have to go through a lot of government regulations and everything to be real. But we think there is a good future there. Moving on from this slide, we'll talk a little bit about carbon credits and carbon offset. Now, a lot of these were carbon credits and carbon offsets was discussed in Kyoto Protocol. They are very simple concepts, Carbon credit is a generic term for any tradable certificate or permit representing the right to emit 1 ton of carbon dioxide or the equivalent amount of greenhouse gases. And carbon offset is a reduction in emissions of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases made in order to compensate for emissions made elsewhere. Offsets are measured in tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, or CO2e. 1 ton of carbon offset represents the reduction of 1 ton of carbon dioxide or its equivalent in other greenhouse gases. Now, in more simple terms, if you look at this particular diagram, if you see, let's say, for example, someone owns an industry, they make shoes, and they emit about 100 tons of carbon dioxide. I'm just throwing a number out there. What that does is now they have emitted about 100 tons of carbon dioxide. What can they do to offset their carbon emissions? They can invest in sustainable energy, which could be solar or wind. Again, they could also put it on buildings or put it on the ground. And what they do is through this sustainable energy, they do some carbon offset and they get some credits, which is they get the carbon credit, and that goes back to the industry. And basically, then they do a plus minus and they're good. So that's how carbon credits and carbon offset works, and that generally has helped the industry quite a bit, and will continue to do so. The last slide I have is how does the post-pandemic era look like? We are in a very unprecedented pandemic situation right now, but we know that there is also another pandemic coming, and that's a bigger one, is climate change. We are already seeing droughts and unprecedented rain, and then melting of ice caps and everything happening. Ecosystems are getting destroyed because we are using so much fossil fuels. Now, during this pandemic, you have all of a sudden seen that the price of oil has dropped significantly. That doesn't mean it will go up again. So if you look into this graph, you can see that the price of oil has been very volatile. At some point of time, it was about $160 a barrel. And now it has dropped down to almost zero. But that's not going to be the same forever. As soon as the economy picks back up, these numbers will go up again. And this is something the investment world doesn't really like. Now, if you look at solar or wind, for example, the pricing, this is 1975, has come down significantly. If you see, this was $1 per watt. Solar was about $100 a watt. And now it's about 30 cents a watt. So there's no comparison what the price has dropped in these years. And also the technology has improved. So the same solar panel that used to produce, let's say 170 watts, the same solar panel today is producing about 410 watts. And as a result of the price reduction, if you see on the right, the installation numbers have gone up and up. And that will continue to be the case for the foreseeable future. So why invest in solar, or wind? And I picked this up from Invictus Capital. There's some 5 very good points that they mentioned. One is a stable, reliable return linked to inflation. No one wants their $100 to become 70 one day and 60 the next day and 110 the day after. If you want to invest $100, 100 rupees, for banks, it's always attractive when it goes up and up and up. And that's what they will get from investing in renewable energy and solar. The second is growing global demand for energy. And there's a growing global demand for energy as population increases, but then there's even more growing global demand for renewable energy. And that'll keep increasing 10 folds, 20 folds, 30 folds each year. Technology is improving and prices are still going down, as I mentioned earlier, and that is still going to be the case and will keep on happening. Number 4 is environmental and social impact. Now, this can't really be measured in dollars and cents. This is key to our survival, and we need to make sure that we keep chipping away on all the carbon emissions and we make the world sustainable and livable. The fifth one is portfolio diversification. Now, again, a lot of investors have invested in oil and gas, but that has not given them a whole lot of return, and it's a very dangerous investment. But with renewables, the investment is very safe, and it also diversifies their portfolio. So we definitely see as an industry that post-pandemic era, solar, wind, sustainable energy, um, sustainable buildings, energy efficiency, all of that will really drive the economy. Um, it'll keep pushing the economy to achieve the new heights. Um, just give it a few months. Hopefully, things will turn around, and it will be, renewables will be back, and we will, keep going as we have always been. That's it. That's all I have for the webinar today, and I will be happy to take your questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Sohan. It was amazing to know how solar industry is expanding, and it would be an inevitable part of our everyday life in the future.